Okay, so I want to start today with something that I think is, well, it's a pretty universal
Oh,
experience.
I'm already nervous. What is it?
I'm talking about that very specific circle of hell that is the PDF copy-paste. You've got an invoice, it looks perfect, nice table, you highlight it, copy it.
And you paste it into a
A
spreadsheet and
disaster.
total disaster. It's not even just messy. The columns are all swapped. The labels are floating somewhere else entirely. It it looks less like an invoice and more like a ransom note.
The famous ransom note effect. Yeah. And it's funny, but it's also a huge, huge bottleneck in business. We think of PDFs as data, but they're really just pictures of data.
And that's the disconnect we're digging into today. We're looking at a brand new release, DeepSeek OCR 2. And the claim is, it's a big one. They're not just saying they fix the typos, they're saying they fix the structure.
Exactly. And to be clear, this isn't just, another software update. The idea here is a pretty fundamental shift in how machines read things. The mission is to get past just transcribing pixels into letters.
It's what they're calling structure-first recognition.
Structure first. I mean, that sounds a little bit like marketing speak. What does that actually mean for me and my ransom note invoice?
Well, think about how traditional OCR works. It asks a really simple question. What letters are on this page? That's it. It's a literal translation.
Okay.
DeepSeek argues that's completely the wrong question. The real question, the one that actually matters for, real work, is what does this page mean?
And meaning isn't just a big long list of words.
No, not at all. Meaning lives in the relationships between things. It's that invisible line connecting a label to its value, or one row to the next. You lose those relationships, you've lost the meaning, even if every single word is spelled correctly.
So if this model is actually working, the output shouldn't just be a stream of text.
No, and that is the key difference. The product here isn't text, it's layout. The model actually outputs Markdown, so it keeps your headings as headings, lists stay as lists, and tables. Well, they actually stay as tables. It preserves the skeleton.
That's huge for any kind of automation.
Yep.
But I want to get under the hood here. The guide talks a lot about something called Visual Causal Flow. It sounds really abstract. How could a machine have flow?
It does sound a bit sci-fi, I'll give you that. But think about how a normal scanner works. It's totally rigid. It just grinds from the top left corner straight down to the bottom right. It doesn't care what's on the page.
Right, it's blind to the layout. It's just a grid of pixels to it.
Precisely. DeepSeek completely flips that. It uses this thing called a DeepEncoder to basically step back and squint at the whole page first. It gets a global impression.
Like a human does. When I pick up a document, I don't start reading the first word in the corner. I see the headline, the columns, the big picture.
You build a map in your head. And that's what the model is doing. It identifies the blocks. This is the header, this is the main table, that's the footer, before it even tries to read a single letter.
So it knows Table A is a totally separate thing from Sidebar B before it even decodes the text in them.
Yes. That's the causal part of the name. The layout causes the reading order. It creates a plan. It decides, okay, I'll read this first, then this, then that, following the document's logic, not just the page coordinate.
And the payoff for all that work. The guide lists some very specific wins.
And the wins are exactly the things that always break. Columns don't bleed into each other anymore. The total do line actually stays with its number. Table headers stick with their cells.
I did like the phrase in the guide. When confident, the model stops improvising and just reads.
That's the goal, right? Boring is good. You want it to stop guessing and just report what's there, structure included.
Okay, so this obviously takes some serious computational muscle. You can't just simulate a human brain without, burning some energy. The guide talks about a token budget and jokes about turning GPUs into space heaters.
It's a real problem. Vision models are incredibly hungry. If you feed them one giant high-res image of a whole page, the cost. It just skyrockets. It's a quadratic thing. Double the image size, you quadruple the processing pain.
So how does DeepSeek handle that without literally melting my server?
It uses a strategy they call dynamic resolution. The best analogy is like looking at a map of a city. You don't need a satellite view of every single blade of grass at once. You need a general view of the neighborhoods, and then you need to zoom in on the specific street signs.
So it's looking at smaller tiles of the page.
Exactly. It mixes that global squint view we talked about with a bunch of smaller, high-detail crops. So it's balancing the big picture with the fine print.
And there are some practical levers mentioned for us to pull, too. If I'm running this and I run out of memory.
You lower the image size. That's your first move, your emergency brake.
And what if my tables look mushy? Like the structure is there, but the lines are kind of blurry.
Then you do the opposite. You increase the base size. That tells the model to pay closer attention to the structural lines and borders.
Okay, let's talk benchmarks for a second. Usually when I see a benchmark section, my eyes just glaze over. It's a wall of numbers. But this guide insists they predict specific real-world failures.
I love that framing because benchmarks can be a strange sport. You have to translate the score into what it means for your actual work.
So let's do that translation. First one, text edit distance. What's that mean for me?
A low score there means fewer typos. Simple as that. It means your invoice ID INV001 doesn't become INV00 pound, just basic character accuracy.
Got it. Table structure score.
That's row integrity. That's the big one. If that score is low, your beautiful table collapses into one long, useless paragraph. If it's high, the table stays a table.
And reading order error.
That's about column mixing. If that error rate is high, the model might read across your debit column and your credit column like it's a single sentence.
That's not a typo. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Exactly. So you look at those scores for reassurance.
Right.
But, and this is super important, the guide is very clear. Numbers are numbers. The only real truth is your own documents.
The weirdest PDF test.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's get into the nuts and bolts of actually running this. Hardware reality check. Can I run this on my gaming laptop?
Huh. You might want to open a window if you try. Look, you can run it on 8 gigs of VRAM for a single image here and there. It'll work. You can squeeze it in. But if you're trying to process a backlog of documents, you need a much smoother ride. The guide is pretty blunt. You want 24 gigs of VRAM for a real production setup.
So we're really in dedicated server territory.
Generally, yeah. And it's not just the card. The software stack is, let's call it opinionated.
What do you mean by that?
There are some non-negotiables. You need Linux, specifically Ubuntu. You absolutely need NVIDIA drivers where the NVIDIA SMI command actually works.
I saw that line in the guide. It said, if torch.uj.i is available, returns false, just stop. Don't even look at the Python code. Go fix your drivers first.
It's the is it plugged in check for AI. But there's another trap mentioned, something specific about flash attention.
Oh, right. Flash attention sounds like a superpower.
It's a key optimization that makes these models run way faster. But getting it installed can be a real pain. The guide specifically says to install flashatten with the no build isolation flag.
I saw that warning in big red letters. What happens if you ignore it?
Well, the installation might look like it succeeded, but when you go to run the model, it'll be painfully slow, or it might just crash. It's one of those little gotchas that can burn an entire afternoon of debugging.
Okay, so we've got the expensive hardware, we've wrestled with the drivers. Now what? The guide calls, using the transformers library, the screwdriver method.
Right. It's the fastest, simplest way to just validate that the model is working on your machine.
And looking at the code snippet, it seems like all the magic is really in the prompt you send it.
It is. This is where you really see that shift we talked about. You are literally talking to the software to change how it perceives pixels.
And there are two main prompts. If you just want plain text, you just send it free OCR.
Super simple.
Yep.
But if you want the layout, the tables, the markdown, you have to use the special grounding prompt. And it has this little token in it. Grounding.
Feels like you're casting a spell.
In a way, you are. That token tells the model to switch on its spatial understanding brain. It changes modes from just read the words to map the layout and then read.
And there's a crucial tip here. Boring is good.
Absolutely. Set the temperature to 0. You do not want creativity from your OCR. You don't want it to hallucinate a discount that wasn't there. You want cold, hard, repeatable precision.
Okay, so transformers is the screwdriver. But for a real product, I'd probably need a power drill.
And that's vLLM.
Why do I need vLLM? What does it give me?
Speed and scale. If you have a lot of documents to process or lots of users hitting an API at once, that simple transformer script just won't keep up. vLLM is built for better batching and gives you much more stable, predictable latency.
The guide also mentions Llama, which a lot of people use for running local models because it's so easy.
They do, but the warning here is pretty stark. It says running this on Llama is not the happy path.
Why not? Llama runs everything.
It's because of the custom image handling. Remember those dynamic tiles and crops? That's not something Llama's standard setup handles gracefully. You can probably force it to work, but if you want it to just work out of the box, you stick to vLLM.
Good to know. I want to spend a minute on what I think is the most practical part of this whole guide. The PDF to Markdown pipeline.
This is definitely where the rubber meets the road.
Because, as we said, PDFs are containers, not images. but the model needs an image.
Correct. You can't just throw a PDF file at the model. You need a workflow. So, step 1. Render each page of the PDF into an image. A library like PyMap PDF is perfect for that.
Step 2. Run DeepSeek OCR page by page.
And then the part that's harder than it sounds. Step 3. Merge all that markdown together.
Why is that so hard?
Because documents don't care about page breaks. You might have a table that starts on page 1 and finishes on page 2. If you just naively stick the markdown together, you could break the table or get a page number stuck in the middle of a sentence.
Right, so the guide has some cleanup tips.
Yeah, simple stuff that makes a huge difference, like collapse extra blank lines, normalize your heading so you don't get a new heading 1 every single page. You have to treat the model's output as raw material that still needs a little polishing.
All right, let's play a game. The guide has a great section on reliability fixes. I'll give you a symptom, you give me the cure.
Okay, I'm ready.
Symptom. The model is repeating itself. It's just looping the same sentence over and over.
Diagnosis. It's getting lost in the details. It's zoomed in too far. Cure. Reduce the image size. Tell it to zoom out a bit.
Okay. Symptom? My table headers are gone. The data's all there, but the labels at the top are just missing.
Diagnosis. It's skimming too fast and missing the structure. Cure. Increase the base size to force it to look closer at those lines and headers.
Final symptom. I'm processing a document in, say, French, and the model starts spitting out weird characters.
Ah, that's language drift. The model is an absolute powerhouse in Chinese and English. For other languages, it's less confident. It might start to drift. You just have to be more careful with verification.
And finally, deployment. How do I wrap this up so my whole team can use it without having to know Python?
You wrap it in an API, use something like FastAPI, create one simple endpoint. You send it an image, it sends you back the markdown.
But the guide had a specific warning about PDFs in production.
Rate limiting. Processing a 100-page PDF is a heavy, heavy job. If you let 10 users do that at the same time, you will crash your server. So you need a queue. And for the love of all that is efficient, you need a cache.
Wait, if someone uploads the same company policy PDF 10 times in an hour?
Don't reprocess it 10 times. Hash the file, check if you've already done it, and just return the cached result.
Okay, we're coming toward the end here, and I want to zoom out. We've talked about this whole workshop that is DeepSeek OCR 2. Is there still a place for the simple hammer?
You're talking about Tesseract.
Yeah, the old open source reliable.
Oh, absolutely. Tesseract is a fantastic hammer, and sometimes all you need to do is hit a nail. If you have a clean, single-column document, and you just need the text, no layout, no tables, Tesseract is faster, lighter, and way easier to run.
But if you've got that messy, multi-column invoice,
Then you need the workshop. You need DeepSeek.
the guide ends with a challenge, and I think we should issue that same challenge to everyone listening.
I completely agree.
The challenge is this. Don't just take our word for any of this. Go find 10 of your own documents, but not the easy ones. Find the weirdest, nastiest PDFs you have.
The ones that were scanned crooked. The ones with coffee stains. The ones that break your current system every single time.
Run them through DeepSeek OCR 2 and just compare the output. See for yourself if it actually solves that ransom note problem.
And really pay attention to the layout. Does the table actually look like a table? That's the only test that matters.
The final thought from the material is that this isn't just better OCR, it's a better reader.
And that distinction is everything. It's trying to understand the document, not just copy it.
Which brings me to one last thought I want to leave you with. If these machines are now moving from just scanning pixels, which is a very machine-like thing to do, to forming global impressions and making reading plans, which is a very human thing to do, what's next?
It does raise a fascinating question.
If we're teaching these models to read like us, prioritizing the structure and the intent over just the raw data, do they start picking up our bad habits too? Will a future version start skimming the boring parts? Will it start ignoring bad formatting because it finds it annoying?
Or maybe it starts asking clarifying questions. This column header is ambiguous. Did you mean fiscal year 2024?
Now that is a terrifying thought, a model that critiques my spreadsheet formatting.
We might be closer than you think.